Kevin, so what brings you to New Zealand, especially to Hamilton, this garden?
Well, I love botanical gardens. I think they're one of the peaceful refuges in every city. So whenever I go overseas, I'm from Adelaide, South Australia, of course, I always visit the local botanic gardens, and I was told that this was a really beautiful one. My reason for coming to New Zealand, I was invited here to do a series of workshops on education and human values, which is a subject very dear to my heart. I've been living Swami's values for the last 40 odd years. Probably a very important part of my life before that as well, but certainly knowing about it for the last 40 odd years. And I was delighted to be invited by the SSSIO school, the SSSIO kindergarten in North Island, to come here. I've been working with those teachers on and off for the last 3 years via video, so it's an absolute delight to actually meet them in person. And we've had 2 really wonderful days where we've explored the concept of education and human values in great depth.
So this is your first time in New Zealand?
No, it's not my first time in New Zealand, but it's definitely my first time to the North Island. We did visit the South Island, my wife Lorraine and I, about 16 years ago.
So this is, as you know, is the a Chinese garden. So let's have a swing. Let's see what you had. Have you seen the pre-chat?
Uh,
So there's the.
the impressive thing for me in this particular garden, more so than just about any other garden I've ever been in, is its embracing of multiculturalism. So there's Japanese gardens, there's this Chinese garden, and it's incredibly beautiful. And there's an emanating peace which just pervades the entire place. You feel like you're part of nature, and that's very important to me.
Okay, let's move on to some other gardens.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Though Swami visited me when I was a child, I didn't recognise it as Swami. I didn't actually come to Swami until I was, well, it was 1979, so that would have made me 28. And I was introduced to Swami through my wife Lorraine, who's a very spiritual person. She was reading Howard Murfitt's books and Samuel Samwise's books and Hislop's books. And my initial attraction to Swami was that he was a great educator. I was a teacher and I was looking for meaning in my existence as a teacher, and I discovered this amazing program called Education in Human Values. And so that's what brought me to Swami. At Swami's 60th birthday, I used to go to bhajans. At Swami's 60th birthday at a friend's house, I had a vision of Swami where he confirmed that he had actually saved my life when I was a teenager, and recounted everything about that particular incident. And it was from that moment on that I was convinced that he was actually a divine being. So in 1994, that led us to getting a gift from our youngest son to visit Puttapati. Swami again reconfirmed that same story, and we've been very staunch devotees trying to live Swami's life ever since. The thing I love about Swami is, his life was his message, and when he left his physical form, it's now up to us to show that our lives are his message. And that's how I live my life.
So we are at a very peaceful place here. It's called the Charbagh Garden.
It is. It's
What do you think of this place?
The emanation of energy in this place is absolutely amazing. I can feel Swami's presence here. So I think you should have a pan around the garden because it is so beautiful. It actually reminds me of being in Prashantan Nilayam.
So this is the Charbagh Garden with 4 parts. So
and I am humbled to think that you actually had a hand in the construction and the design of this garden.
Yes, I was one of the trustees.
Yes, it's absolutely delightful. Well, you guys have done a fabulous job, and it certainly is a place of peace. So I certainly thank you for bringing me here to see it. It's just wonderful.
Let's go further inside.
Yeah.
And there's the art wall.
Absolutely beautiful.
So this, the whole day is supposed to be a fountain.
Mhm.
There's a
Could
lot
I
of-
say something here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Standing here is actually like being in Swami's mandir. The energy is amazing. You look up, you see this beautiful roof. It reminds me of the cycle and hall.
Yes. And there's a
I can
Wagyu
feel,
river
I can,
flowing
I
there.
can feel Swami's presence. And even the little birds that come in like they used to in the mandir. So this is the mandir, and this is the Chitravati. Yeah, how could you not feel Swami's presence in a place like this? And the beautiful gardens just remind me of the ashram with the attention to detail and the neatness of the gardens and the well-kept nature of them is exactly like it is in Prasanthi Nilayam.
So Kevin, I understand you went to the 10th World Conference in Prasanthi and you gave a talk. Give us some
Yes,
experience on that?
I was very humbled to actually be part of the 10th World Conference. In fact, I think, from memory, I was the only person from Australia that was invited to speak, which was even more humbling. That was an incredible experience for me because I'd had a dream where Swami told me the sorts of things that I need to talk about, and I was led onto the stage for my talk by a young West Indian who was a delightful boy, one of the youth that was there. I paid homage to Swami, and then I walked up to the microphone, and I don't use notes, but I use key points. And so I'd written some words down on a piece of paper as to what I thought I was going to talk about, that Swami had told me I should be talking about. And when I looked down at the piece of paper, all I could see was wavy lines. So I was somewhat thrown back by this, and I thought I was shaking so badly that the podium must have been swaying, because it was absolutely a frightening experience. And the hall was full, and I've spoken to large groups before, but never a group quite that large. And suddenly I felt a calming hand on my shoulder and a voice whispering in my ear. And whenever Swami has spoken to me, either in dreams or in reality, in his actual physical form, he's always addressed me as Kevin, my Kevin. And he said, I said, Swami, what are you doing? What am I supposed to be doing here? And he whispered very gently, my dearest Kevin, you are here to speak from the heart, so speak from the heart. And so I spoke, and it apparently had a very profound effect on the people there, because my story is, I guess in short, for me anyway, but for other people, they found it to be quite miraculous that Swami had actually saved my life.
Yeah, I saw
as
it.
a
Very
teenager.
touching. Very touching.
Yeah. And so for days after that, I would have people coming up to me in the ashram and either bursting into tears and giving me a hug, or bursting into tears and giving me pad namaskar, which was actually a bit foreign for a Westerner. But, it was a beautiful experience, and I met lots of people at that conference, including a couple of people who came up and apologised for misjudging me and not listening to what I had to say at one stage when there was a split in this organisation in Australia. So that was a very healing conference for me and a profound experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So we are now at the Italian garden. Can you see that?
It's absolutely, there's no doubt that this is an Italian garden. And,
You're in Italy now.
Yeah, we are in Italy, and as you know, a lot of my background is I was a practicing Catholic whilst I was with Swami, and this just reminds me of the grace of the centre of the Christian world, which of course is Vatican City for me as a Catholic in Italy. Absolutely beautiful garden, isn't it? And again, that flowing, that The gentleness of flowing water. It reminds me that God said in the Old Testament to one of the prophets that he did not come as a raging storm or a fire or a wind. He came as the gentle breeze. So we had to still ourselves and be silent to hear the voice of God. And I guess that was the opening for me to start teaching mindfulness and silent sitting in the Catholic schools that I worked in, which became an everyday practice for people, that they would actually sit and reflect and have some sort of positive affirmation for the day in their connection with God.
Thank you.
It is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, this is very nice. Look at that. I'm absolutely delighted that you've brought me here, because one of the things I think is important in every culture is for us to honour the wisdom of our elders. We have long not done that in Australia with our own Indigenous peoples, with the First Nations, but we're starting to ramp up the pace for that now. And I've for a long time been involved with the Indigenous spirituality in Australia. So it is absolutely delightful for me to come to a centre of holiness for Maoris. I think this is just delightful. The lessons that they have and that they teach us are obviously still pertinent today. Indeed, I don't know a lot about Maori culture, but for Indigenous culture in Australia, one of the things that people like me, like the white settlers who came to Australia did, was misunderstand Indigenous culture. And one of the misunderstandings I understand to be was that even when they did acknowledge Indigenous culture, they talked about the dream time. Indigenous people in Australia don't talk about the dream time because it sounds like that's a limited thing. They talk about the dreaming. So it's about past, present and emerging. And we've got to keep that in mind when we come to places like this, that we appreciate that this is part of our evolution as well. It's not separate, it's part of our evolution. Their culture too is heavily based in values, and we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah. So this is, as you know, it's a kumbra garden.
Yes.
So that's where they grow kumbra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a sacred food for them?
Yeah, it is a sweet potato. We
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, I know it's sweet
Yeah,
potato,
yeah,
but
yeah.
is it
Sacred.
it's a
Yes,
sacred
yes,
food for them? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. I was going to ask you what those mountains were. Now you've answered. See, all you have to do is think, and Swami provides the answer for you. It's really interesting to see that in Maori culture there is a lot of carvings to explain their stories and their spirituality. In Australian Aboriginal culture, in the Indigenous people of Australia, a lot of that was done with rock paintings, cave paintings. They also do decorate some things like message sticks and so on, but generally speaking, Aboriginal people didn't have icons like this, religious icons. Their cultural thing was to draw their god forms and the spirits of the land using native and natural colours from the earth, like ochre. And so I've been very privileged on a number of occasions in Australia to actually go to very sacred sites where very few white people have been, to actually look at those drawings, and they are absolutely astounding, and they fill my heart with absolute joy. So it's really wonderful for me to actually see a different culture expressing their spirituality in a different way.
Thank you. So Kevin, we are at the Egyptian garden.
Yes. Beautiful garden
Yeah.
too. I feel very connected to this garden because the earliest part of the Old Testament, of course, talks about the connection between the Hebrews and Egypt. So very much part of the story, ultimately, to the evolution of Christianity, where the Jewish people were constantly at loggerheads with other people, you know, and so the concept of the story, for example, of Moses leading the people out of Egypt to the Promised Land is very much like the modern day Swami Sai Baba giving people an opportunity to be led out of darkness into light. I see a parallel with that. So although some people object a little bit to the icon nature, the iconistic nature of Egyptian spirituality, I think it has its place, and I think we need to understand how we've evolved over time to go from that iconology to ultimately realise that the real God is actually within all of us. Well, this is fun.
Yeah. With the keys?
Yeah. Interestingly, this area reminds me very much of Swami's program on Sealing on Desires.
Yeah.
You know, how far we've come with technology, with advancement of transport, indeed with writing.
Yeah.
But the concept that, you know, we need to look after the earth. So obviously this has been very well preserved to show us what life was like. Again, it reminds us that we should learn from the past but not live in the past. We should actually live in the present. And so the symbol of a car like this, when we now compare it with modern cars, I think that's also a reminder of how grateful we should be for the gifts that we've been given. So, as I said, for some strange reason, being in this area reminds me of Swami's Sealing on Desires, that we don't have to have X number of possessions and so on. So it's still a peaceful place though, and I would imagine this would be a great place to write.
Yes. Right, so next time when you come, you can write a book here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On how important gardens are.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti